Detroit, 1970. Inside a quiet General Motors boardroom, the mood wasn't celebratory. On paper, this should have been one of the biggest victories in the company's history. The car they were about to launch was supposed to save General Motors from something terrifying, something foreign, something the American auto industry had never truly faced before. Small cars from Japan, Toyota, Datsun, Honda, they were cheap, efficient, reliable, and Americans were starting to notice. For decades, General Motors had ruled American roads with massive V8s and chrome-heavy machines that measured fuel economy in jokes per gallon. But suddenly the world was changing. Gas prices were creeping upward. Young drivers wanted something different, and overseas companies were proving that smaller didn't mean weaker. General Motors needed an answer, fast, so they created a car designed to crush the imports. A revolutionary compact, lightweight, affordable. Built with bold engineering the industry had never seen before. They called it the Chevrolet Vega. Inside GM, executives believed this car would dominate the new economy market and send a clear message to Japan. America still ruled the road. But what no one realized was that hidden inside the Vega was an engine that would slowly destroy everything the car was meant to save. And by the time General Motors understood what had gone wrong, it was already too late. Because this engine wouldn't just damage a reputation, it would force GM to cancel an entire model line and leave behind one of the most infamous engineering disasters in American automotive history. The story really begins years before the Vega ever touched a showroom floor. In the late 1960s, Detroit was confident, almost arrogant. General Motors controlled nearly half of the U.S. car market. Ford and Chrysler were the only real domestic competition. Foreign brands barely registered in sales charts. But executives inside GM's strategy offices were watching something unsettling. Japanese cars were creeping into American driveways, not because they were glamorous, because they worked. They started every morning. They didn't overheat in traffic. They didn't leave oil stains on suburban driveways. And they were incredibly cheap to run. To Detroit, this was embarrassing. American engineering had once defined the global auto industry. Now small imports were quietly proving that reliability mattered more than horsepower. So GM launched a secret mission, Project XP-887. The goal was simple: build the perfect American compact, lightweight, modern, efficient, and most importantly, profitable. GM planned to build the car faster than any vehicle in its history. They wanted it in showrooms before Japanese brands could dominate the segment. But that kind of speed meant one thing: compromises, lots of them. Engineers knew the Vega had to be different. Traditional cast-iron engines were heavy, too heavy for the kind of lightweight economy car GM envisioned. So they attempted something bold, something experimental: an aluminum engine block. At the time, aluminum engines were rare in mass-market cars. Racing teams experimented with them. Exotic European brands sometimes used them. But for an affordable American commuter car, it was risky. Still, the benefits looked incredible on paper. The engine would be lighter, more efficient, cheaper to produce once manufacturing scaled, and it would make the Vega feel modern compared to the outdated designs from Detroit's past. Inside GM's engineering department, there were quiet warnings. Some engineers were nervous about durability. Aluminum blocks behave differently under heat than iron ones. If cooling systems weren't perfect, problems could spiral quickly. But the timeline was brutal. Executives wanted the car ready for the 1971 model year. That meant skipping certain testing phases, cutting development corners, pushing the design into production before it had truly proven itself. And when the Vega finally arrived in showrooms, America loved it. At first, car magazines praised the styling. Drivers liked the nimble handling. It was small but sporty, affordable but modern. Dealerships moved them quickly. For a brief moment, it looked like GM had succeeded. The Vega was supposed to become a cornerstone of Chevrolet's compact lineup for the entire decade. But then something strange started happening. Owners began noticing small problems. At first, they seemed minor. Engines ran hotter than expected. Some cars consumed oil faster than normal. Mechanics shrugged it off. New cars sometimes had quirks. But as the miles piled up, the issues became harder to ignore. Engines warped. Cylinder walls wore down rapidly. Cooling systems struggled to keep temperatures under control. Some Vegas began overheating constantly. Others started burning oil like aging muscle cars. Drivers who had purchased the Vega expecting reliable transportation were suddenly facing repair bills. And worse, the problems were spreading across the country. Dealership service departments were flooded with complaints. Mechanics pulled engines apart and discovered something disturbing. The aluminum engine block wasn't holding up under real-world conditions. Heat distortion damaged internal components. Cylinder walls deteriorated faster than expected. Some engines failed shockingly early, sometimes before 50,000 miles. Word began to spread. Quietly at first, then loudly. Automotive journalists started digging deeper. Consumer advocates began asking uncomfortable questions. Why were so many Vegas failing? And why had General Motors rushed this car into production? Then the lawsuits started. Owners claimed defective engines. Class action cases accused GM of knowingly selling flawed vehicles. Dealers struggled to manage angry customers. Reputation damage began spreading faster than any recall could contain. But the worst moment came when the national media started paying attention. Stories appeared describing Vegas that overheated during normal commutes. Drivers stranded on highways. Engines destroyed long before they should have worn out. For a company like General Motors, whose identity was built on engineering confidence, this was humiliating. And the timing couldn't have been worse, because the 1970s had just delivered another crisis: the oil shock. Gasoline prices skyrocketed. Americans rushed toward small, fuel-efficient cars. Exactly the kind of market the Vega was supposed to dominate. But instead of becoming GM's weapon against imports, the Vega was becoming a warning. Consumers who experienced engine failures often replaced their cars with something else: a Toyota Corolla, a Datsun B210, a Honda Civic, cars that didn't overheat, cars that didn't burn oil, cars that simply worked. Inside General Motors, executives began realizing the scale of the disaster. They attempted fixes, cooling system upgrades, engine modifications, manufacturing changes, but reputations are fragile. Once trust breaks, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Sales began dropping. Dealers couldn't convince buyers that the problems were solved. Even customers who had never owned a Vega had heard the stories. And in the auto industry, rumors travel faster than horsepower. Then came the moment that sealed the Vega's fate: rust. The car's body panels began corroding rapidly in northern climates. Road salt ate through sheet metal. Fenders deteriorated. Paint peeled. Suddenly, the Vega wasn't just known for engine failures. It was known for falling apart. General Motors had invested nearly $1 billion developing the car and its production systems. But the damage to the brand was becoming impossible to ignore. Executives faced a brutal decision: continue pouring money into a damaged product, or walk away. By the late 1970s, the answer became unavoidable. Chevrolet would end Vega production. The car that had once been designed to define GM's compact future was quietly discontinued after the 1977 model year, just 6 years after launch. But the fallout didn't stop there, because the Vega's failure didn't just kill one car. It forced General Motors to rethink its entire small car strategy. The company scrambled to replace the Vega with new platforms: the Chevrolet Monza, later the Chevrolet Chevette, each attempt trying to erase the memory of the Vega disaster. But reputations linger. For years, the Vega became a punchline in American car culture. Late-night comedians joked about them. Mechanics warned buyers to stay away, and collectors avoided them almost entirely. A car that had once promised to defeat foreign competition had instead helped accelerate it, because every disappointed Vega owner represented a potential customer lost to an import brand, and many never came back. Yet the strangest part of the story is what happened decades later. Time passed. Automotive history softened some of the anger, and a small group of enthusiasts began looking at the Vega differently. Not as a failure, but as a fascinating experiment, because beneath the flawed execution, the idea had been bold: lightweight engineering, compact design, modern styling. In some alternate timeline, with more development time, with better testing, the Vega might have succeeded. Some restored examples now appear at classic car shows, polished, preserved, almost unrecognizable from the rusting machines that once filled junkyards across America. And when people see them today, they often ask the same question: what if General Motors had waited? What if the engine had been perfected before production? What if the Vega had actually delivered the reliability it promised? Would it have crushed the imports? Would Toyota and Honda still have risen so quickly in America? Or was Detroit already heading toward a future it couldn't stop? Because sometimes the most important moments in automotive history aren't the cars that succeed. They're the ones that fail, the machines that reveal cracks inside the industry, the warning signs companies ignore until the damage becomes irreversible. And somewhere inside GM's archives, there are engineers who still remember those early meetings. The ones where concerns about the Vega's engine were quietly raised. Concerns that might have changed everything if someone had listened. But history rarely gives second chances, and the Vega remains a reminder that sometimes one engine is all it takes to bring an entire car down with it.